here with one of our spectacular agents, Rick Lambden.
Hello, hello.
And we want to chat a little bit about something that keeps coming up, especially since coronavirus. Everybody is reaching out saying, hey, I'm going to wait to buy because I want to buy a foreclosure. And there's a lot of myths around foreclosures, and so we'd like to clear the air a little bit so that buyers out there can understand truly what that looks like and what's available to them and what may not be available to them. So let's start with, we hear two different words around foreclosure. What is the difference between a foreclosure and this thing called an REO?
So there is a difference. The foreclosure process, that's what it is. It's a foreclosure process, and the REO is once a bank takes a property back, then the REO actually stands for real estate owned. So that's how the bank classifies it, as a real estate owned. They take it back into their portfolio. The foreclosure is a process that happens from when an owner stops making their payment to when it becomes an REO.
Got it. So foreclosure is the process, REO is the title, if you will, once the bank owns it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you also touched on there being a process and then missing a payment. So how exactly does that foreclosure occur, and what are the steps to land it to an REO?
Yeah, so every state, it's good to know that every state's process is a little bit different. There's two different foreclosure processes. In California, the process starts basically on day 31. A owner misses a payment, doesn't pay it for 30 days. On day 31, technically, the REO process can start. Now, it doesn't have to start, but that's technically when it can start. Typically, banks will wait till about 60 days or even sometimes 90 days before they'll issue what is called a notice of default. That's basically saying that you're in default, you stop making your payment, so we're starting the foreclosure process so that we can take the property back as agreed to when you signed your note.
Okay. So do you think, with coronavirus among us and where we're at right now in the market economically, that we're going to start seeing more foreclosures?
Well, so there's a possibility of that. However, again, the market that we're in today is just much different than the market we were in back in 2009, 2010, when we saw the last REO wave hit. So we're in a much better place financially, but at the same time, there's huge unemployment right now. And so that's the question mark, how is that going to affect people, and will we see that? So my best guess would be we're probably going to see some. Do I think it's going to be a wave like we had where, it's either a short sale or it's an REO and the market crashes? I just don't see anything, and I haven't read anything that indicates to me that that's the direction that we're headed.
Which I don't disagree with you. Like, I'm of the same belief. There is, before coronavirus happened, there was less than 1% of houses in California that were actually in foreclosure.
Right.
And so that's nominal compared to what we saw about a decade ago.
Yeah, and there always is a foreclosure market. There's always situations that happen in life where, people lose a job, people get sick, things happen. And so there is that process that happens, and it continually happens regardless of what the market's doing. But do we think, or do I think that there's going to be this huge wave now because of things that are happening? Again, I just don't think we're going to see what we saw back in 2009, 2010.
Got it. Well, if there was a viewer interested in getting into the foreclosure property world and wanted to purchase one, what would be kind of their first step to make that happen?
Call Rick.
Sure, you can call me. So, talking a little bit more about the process of the REO. So once it goes through the foreclosure process, then what typically happens is, and there's a whole bunch of things. There's a notice of default, there's a notice of trustee sale that has to happen. There has to be a date set that the property is actually going to sell. At that point, somebody could actually go to the courthouse steps and buy the property for what the minimum bid that the mortgage holder has put on the property. So you could buy it that way. You've got to have cash, and it's a very tough process because you really have to make sure that you understand what you're getting. In that situation, you don't have the ability to go and do inspections and do all that stuff that you would when you're buying a normal home. So it's a pretty risky, that's the word I was looking for. It's a pretty risky process. But that's one way you could do it. Once the house doesn't sell at the steps, then it goes back to the bank, and the bank typically will put that house on the market. It's going to hit the MLS. There are agents out there that deal with a lot of banks, specifically one-on-one, and so they get a lot of that property, and so they're going to end up on the MLS. And at that point, you're going to still want representation. You're going to still want somebody that can walk you through the process of not only buying a house, but helping protect you against some other pitfalls that come along with buying a foreclosure.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Because no inspection, that's a big thing that people don't think about.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of times there's no utilities to the property.
Yeah, and so again, it depends on the lender, depends on who the servicing company is for the lender and what they're doing there. But if it does go back to the bank and the bank puts it on the MLS, then a buyer would have the ability to do inspection, things like that. It's just if they bought it at the steps, then that process, they're buying it as is basically, and that's what makes it riskier.
Right.
Yeah.
So, got another question. So, for some of our viewers that are watching that own a house right now, and that because of current circumstances maybe are not able to make their mortgage payments right now. I know there's some forbearance programs and whatnot out there, but let's say they find themselves in a position where they don't want the liability of a note every month or a payment. What should they be doing right now? Is that something that you can kind of step in and help them with, and how does that all unfold?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and now's the time to do it. If you realize that down the road there's going to be a situation and you're not going to be able to make your payment, maybe you've already taken the step to take advantage of a forbearance, because those are being offered at this point, and you're afraid that once we come out of this, then you're going to be too far behind and you're going to want to sell your property. Now's the time to really get ahead of that, because it's just going to continue to snowball and get worse and worse and worse, and you're going to find yourself not only up against the fact that you can't make your payments anymore, but you're going to become against the timeline that starts happening when you start making those payments. So it is important that if you think you're going to be there, at least sit down, give us a call, let's talk, let's figure out a process, and maybe there's a way for you to get back up to speed on your payments. And if not, then we can certainly help you get the house on the market and get you the best price that's out there.
Awesome.
That's perfect. Well, it sounds like the bottom line is, if you want to learn more about a foreclosure, REO, Rick is going to be your guy. They can find all your contact information at our website, and then we'll also add a link to his Instagram and Facebook. So always feel free to send him a direct message and he'll be right on it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.